This week, you came out with a strategy talking about specifics in terms of what you think we need at this moment in time, whether it's ground troops. How do you make the case to the American people where there is not a will to send our young people back in war-torn areas, that, in fact, we do need ground troops?
First of all, we need to have the commanders decide what our strategy is. We need to have a strategy. And I think the commander-in-chief needs to embrace that strategy, but it needs to be based on what is the optimum way to destroy ISIS and to create security and stability so there's not a void filled and another group comes in. And that will require some ground troops. We have ground troops there now. We have special operators in Syria. We have 3,500 troops in Iraq, but they're not being deployed in a strategic way.
And they don't have the backup that they may very well need.
They have no backup. They're there for limited engagement, and there's no strategy. This is to run out the clock. This is so the president can leave fulfilling a political commitment he made many, many years ago. This is not, the conditions have changed. A caliphate the size of Indiana exists. Every day exists. It gains energy and legitimacy for the disaffected around the world. And they use technology to be able to use propaganda to recruit people here in this country and other places. This is a threat to the homeland. This is not some far-removed deal. We're watching the tragedy unfold in Mali. That's a long way away. But there are people organizing in our own country. As the FBI director has said, that there's something like 80 different investigations that are ISIS-related in our own country. This is serious business, and we need a president that will take it seriously.
So you think ISIS is already in America?
I think that inspired by ISIS, there are people inside our country for sure. I'm only saying what the FBI director has said.
Right. I want to ask you about the refugees, and I certainly want to ask you about Russia as well, which has been a relatively new element in all of this. But let me stay on the metadata for a moment, because I think this whole conflict going on between technology companies and the ability for the government to actually oversee and survey people. Talk to us about that. What is this conflict, and how do we get over it?
The conflict is that now the large technology companies will not cooperate with the federal government as it relates to their back door to determine any types of illicit activities, whether they're going on. They're creating encryption to make it hard for the government to do that, and there's no cooperation. And this is made more complicated by Europe's refusal to deal with our technology companies because of the Snowden allegations. And so we have to create a more cooperative arrangement for our national security where we protect civil liberties and privacy rights of people that are using these platforms, but allow for the United States government to protect us. The encryption that ISIS is using encrypted messages right now. This is the challenge that we face, is as they enhance their technology, it's harder for us to protect the homeland. And so I think we need to reevaluate the relationship between the government and the technology companies. And also, I think the metadata program is important because it was in the domain of the NSA, not in the wireless carriers. So reestablishing that in the way that it existed as part of a concentrated effort in the NSA to keep us safe was the right way to go.
The latest news out of Mali, 80 hostages have now been freed. 80 hostages have been freed. We know that they had taken 170 people hostage. 80 of those have been freed so far in the luxury hotel in the Mali capital amid special forces operations. Special forces have entered the hotel. They haven't told us who they are. Does this speak to any group out there that, without speculating, does this sound like anyone that you would think, Governor, or is this just Islamic terrorists?
Yeah, there are many different variations of the same theme. In fact, I think the focus on ISIS is really important because it's the one place that is consolidated. But there are forms of this in Libya, in Afghanistan, in other countries, including Mali, where the French have fought against Islamic terrorists in the last years.
Let me move on to the Syrian terrorists for a moment. The terrorists coming, trying to infiltrate the refugees, really, I'm trying to say. Can we vet the people coming into the country? Of course, America wants to help these people who have been driven from their homes.
Yeah.
But obviously, ISIS has infiltrated the refugees flow.
They have, and most of the refugees that would come to the United States after a thorough process, which the president needs to explain to the American people what that vetting process is, given these unique circumstances. I applaud the House's vote to press the pause button. they'll come from refugee camps where it is easier to identify them than this migration of 800,000 people from the Middle East across to Europe. But I think we need to have a thorough vetting because of this threat, for sure. We also
Can we have a thorough vetting?
I think it's possible to do it, but we should err on the side of caution. Here's the challenge. The challenge is if Europe doesn't have the same strategy as it relates to border control as we propose, then the visa waiver program comes into effect here in terms of a challenge over the long haul, where countries where you have a passport, creates problems for us to identify whether those folks should be able to come into our own country. This has been made so much more complicated by the inaction of this administration that has been part and part one of the big reasons why we have this refugee crisis altogether. 4 million people have been uprooted in Syria. 4 million out of 23 million. And I think we have a special duty to deal with Christians that are being persecuted as well. We know who they are. You can see their birth certificates. You know their names. These are people that are being attacked across the board. They can't go to the refugee camps because if they go there, it's not safe for them. This is a real challenge, and to suggest that somehow having some sympathy for religious minorities in the Middle East is un-American, as the president has basically said this last week, is just plain wrong.
Governor, thank you for your insights. Thank you for your leadership.
Thanks, Maria.
During this uncertain time. Governor Jeb Bush there.